DeRae, we're back on the mic. It's been months. We finally have a plan. Finally have a focus. It's good to be back. How's it going, man?
Good. It's going well, man. I was gonna play some fireworks on the intro, just to wish everyone a happy New Year. It's been a while, but
When is it too late to say that?
for good reasons. I mean, I think the month of January is Happy New Year, especially or if you haven't spoken to that person yet, right? If it's your first time speaking to them in the new year, Happy New Year. I don't care if it's March.
I actually heard this on the radio in Houston. I listen to sports talk radio sometimes, to pastime or podcast, just instead of music, and they were talking about saying Happy New Year, and they said they are 100% for saying that in the office. They just don't want to speak with anyone, because if you ask someone how your day is going, that could be a potential to prolong the conversation that you didn't necessarily commit that time to. But if you just say Happy New Year, it's just a casual way to say hi, and it's
Yeah,
respectful. So
yeah,
I thought that was an interesting take.
yeah. And a Happy New Year is just so positive. So I think it's I think it's great.
All
Uh,
right.
yeah, just hit them with a Happy New Year, big smile, positive vibes, keep it moving.
Keep it moving, and
Yeah.
I think that's a good segue for the conversation for this episode of the podcast. We had when we had outlined season two. I don't even know if we're on season two, if we're just getting rid of seasons, but we're here, we're recording episodes. One of the things that we had talked about was failure, or you went for it, you gave it a go, it didn't work out, now what? And I think that's kind of a great way to start off the conversation with the new year, because I feel like a lot of people, make New Year's resolutions. At January 1st, the most common one is people go back to the gym, maybe change diets, maybe they're focusing on themselves. Some of them might be small, realistic goals. And, some might say, I want to, have $1 million by the end of the year, or something that seems a little bit more far fetched, and there's not necessarily a plan in place. Um, but I think if you're really doing goal setting, um, you've got to have a plan. You've got to outline a vision, and sometimes you might have everything down. You might have put in all the work all the time, and it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. I mean, that's part of life.
I can relate to that.
Also,
And everyone else can, I'm sure. You were touching on a couple points as far as the gym goes. I was going to ask you, Austin, do you make New Year's resolutions?
I don't. No,
Okay.
I never really have. I think uh, for me, that doesn't mean that I don't set goals, that I don't have, like, long-term visions. I just don't know why I need to wait till January 1st to start something,
Fair
Like,
enough.
if you have a goal or a vision, I think it's best to forecast it out, right? Like, have a certain date in mind. Take you, with the boxing. Your goal, was the 2024 Olympics in Paris,
Yep.
and to reach that goal, you've gotta work backwards,
Yep.
right? You have
Backwards
to have
planning.
certain timelines, and I think the way that New Year's resolutions are set up is we don't work backwards, and I think that that's where you're more prone to fail, if that makes sense.
So I'm not mad at the New Year's resolutions if you're going to take a brute force approach to it. But
Right.
I think maybe people take too big of a bite and like take the gym, for instance. They go to the gym and they just crush themselves early in the year instead of just starting, with something small like walking every day for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, even just something you can do consistently, just a small thing. And then once you have that, you can move on to something a little more intense.
It's get 1% better. I mean, if you're training for a marathon, I think, when we're recording this episode, the, Houston Marathon is actually taking place the next day. It's
A
supposed to
friend
be
of ours, a friend of the show, Tony, is
Yeah.
he's running it. He's last 60 days from the couch, to the pavement,
But he didn't just decide he was gonna wake up on the day of the marathon
which
and
I've
go
done that.
for it.
I've done that before. It's brutal.
All right, not everyone can do it, but I have seen videos of people doing that, and it's impressive, and they are just beat after. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people are, but Tony, went through a process
Yeah.
of training and building up for it. And it's the same thing if you wanna run a 5K, it doesn't have to be a marathon.
Mhm.
If you haven't run, long distance in quite some time, you know, there's methods to build up to that, to build up the stamina, to build up the, the lung capacity, to build up your strength. There's a lot of habits that have to be changed, and it's a process.
Yep, habits make everything. Uh, so for this show, we're going to touch on maybe do a little recap of last year. Right, we're talking about backwards planning and my goal of making the 2024 U.S. Olympic boxing team, which didn't happen. I had a great year, had a great run. I qualified, won a national title in the process in September of last year. Moved on to the Olympic team trials, and where I placed third. So the last time I was at the Olympic team trials in 2016, I placed second. So this time I placed third. 38 years, 9 months. Came back after 7.5 years off, and when I was planning the comeback, I knew I had about 18 months left in the gas tank. And probably about half of that time, I knew I could probably work and train and still move along in the process. At least that's, kind of what I estimated. That's what I estimated out of myself. And I was about spot on, I think. Had I won the trials, the plan was to take a leave of absence from my grown up corporate day job and just focus on qualifying for the games. Uh, but now I'm back with you all. I'm rested up about 6 weeks post Olympic team trials, and I'm really fired up about going 10 toes down in cautious coffee with Austin because we put it on the shelf for a little bit, and that's just a timing issue. There was really no other way. I don't believe in burning the candle at both ends. I'm a pretty intense individual. For those who may know me a little more intimately, I don't know if you've ever worked out with me or if you've competed against me, uh, but that's just how to focus on things. So, Austin, it's good to be back.
I'm really glad to be back. I mean, and something that we are going to do a little bit different, I think, for these upcoming episodes is we're not necessarily going to record in person. We want to make sure that we get content out, and we think if we can do it remotely and utilize the technology that's in front of us, it allows us to produce content faster, more efficient, get it out there. So the excuses are less. And it's something that we want to focus on. We've got some fun plans. I think we're going to launch a newsletter, perhaps start a book club.
At least a blog.
Yeah, blog. Yeah,
Uh,
definitely put in a focus toward cautious coffee. And DeRae, I'm glad you mentioned the Olympics because I think that was actually our last episode, which was the build up, to the national title that you won. It was right after
yeah,
right before you had competed at the last chance qualifier. I think
yeah,
a few months before, and
yeah.
we hadn't really had conversations since then. Obviously, you and I have talked
hmm
offline
hmm
about this, and I just want to say it's awesome what you did, man. Like, to have that goal, go for it, and to be close. That's incredibly impressive. Not many people would be able to do that while maintaining a full corporate job. I mean, a lot of guys that you were competing against were focused on that 100%.
Yeah.
And I know you probably wish that you could have taken the time to um, do it 100%. But the reality of the situation is, you're in a different place in life than a lot of the folks that were competing. And the fact that you were able to balance everything and still finish top 3 in the United States in your classification at this age, that's something incredibly awesome that you're gonna look back on. I know right now you're disappointed. I know there's probably going to be times throughout the next year, especially when the games happen, that you're gonna say, "Man, what if?" Um, but the work that you put in, I think it inspired a lot of people. I think it inspired your son, which is, I think, for you, probably one of the most important things. I think it inspired yourself, as well, to show that, if you put your mind to something and dedicate the time and effort, uh, you can see results. It might not be the result that you wanted, but, fruits of your labor. So I do wanna ask you one thing, 'cause I think when we met up for barbecue, a few weeks after the Olympic trials, I think I asked you, like, how you were doing, and, you said, "You're doing fine," that, you were proud of the effort that you put in, and I know you're proud of the effort that you put in. But it's got to be painful to know that you were so close, and it wasn't the first time you had been this close, but this time there's a finality to it. Being the 40-year-old age limit for Timo say, and knowing that that was it, that was the final curtain, and you actually had shared, uh, a blog post that I think we're going to put out. We're not sure what format, if it'll be a blog post, it'll be a newsletter, where it's going to be, but
Whatever's easiest.
yeah, but I was reading it over, and you were very vulnerable in that letter that you wrote, expressing those disappointments, and I hadn't really heard that from you. So kind of want to know from you, how did you overcome failure? How are you looking at failure? How are you processing it right now? And I don't want to say that failure is necessarily a bad thing, but
Right.
from your
Yeah,
goal,
from my point of view, being that it's final, right? There's no next time. It's double sided for me. Um, Now I was trying to pull up. So forgive me, I was being a little rude earlier, but I was trying to pull up a quote from Fernando Pessoa, and I want to start with that. I want to lead with that. Okay.
yeah, absolutely,
Some people have one great dream in life which they fail to fulfill. Others have no dream at all and fail to fulfill even that. So that gives you an idea of how I think about this. I had a big, hairy, audacious goal that not a lot of people can relate to, and that's okay. And you mentioned, being able to focus full time on that goal. Well, that wouldn't have made the goal as big for me, quite honestly.
right.
I love that I have a grown up corporate job and I'm able to try and pursue this Olympic dream. That was part of it. That was the other side of it for me that kept me not necessarily balanced, but work. If I was only able to work, I wouldn't feel fulfilled. If I was only able to box, I wouldn't. There'd still be something missing. So for
Yeah,
me, it was like it was part of the package, and that's what made it so alluring for me was to be able to do both of those things and to be able to achieve both of those things because I have a pretty good life, Austin.
we both do. Yeah,
I have a really good life, and if I think about this being final, and you talking about it being painful, it's not necessarily painful. There's a tinge of like all the negative feelings because I've been here before, but I know that it's not like the end of the world. There are wars going on in the world,
yeah,
which
literally.
I was a little distracted by, quite honestly. It's like here I am putting all this time, energy, and effort into achieving this lifelong goal, but there's just so much. I won't even say there's so much, right? Because on a grand scale, with 8 billion people, the world is relatively peaceful, right? But there are places in the world where you know people's worlds are upside down and they're experiencing real pain. They're displaced. They don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And here I am in my nice house, driving my nice car or my nice motorcycle or doing whatever other privileged thing I'm able to do to include, the privilege of being able to go after such a goal. So when you talk about the pain and any of the negative things, I have such a broad and expansive purview that the pain and disappointment gets lost in the reality of my existence, which is it's pretty good.
It's wild that you mentioned that, because I had the same thought process last night, actually.
Okay.
We went to dinner. It was a Friday night. We
Hmm.
went in Houston. The restaurant that we went to, I think the clientele there kind of skewed a little bit older.
Yeah.
Probably empty nesters, um, retirees that were there.
Hmm.
Maybe that was the time of night that we went. We're getting old too.
All right.
A little late for those 8 or
Older.
9 o'clock dinners. Um, But I was literally thinking the same thing. I was just kind of like looking around throughout the restaurant, and, you know, friends were meeting up, laughing, doing cheers with their drinks, and
Mhm.
just to think how much chaos there is in the world right now. Um, at least that we're being exposed to. I mean, you've got the situation going in Ukraine. You've got uh, the strikes against the Houthis in Yemen right now. You've got
Mhm.
the situation in Israel and Gaza right now going on, and just to think that we are very fortunate, as you called it, season one, the ovarian lottery, to have been born here in the United States and
Yeah.
to live in a relative peaceful time where we don't have to worry about airstrikes or bombs or something like that. That we can actually afford to go pay overpriced for a meal out um, in a safe environment. And I don't know, it was kind of weird that I was thinking about that, and then you mentioned it on the podcast today.
Yeah. That's how I walk through the world, though.
Yeah, I mean, we're
And
we're very very privileged.
that's probably why a lot of people think I'm so nonchalant about a lot of things. It could even be work. It's just I mean, we're okay, until we're not okay, obviously. And if you look at history, where wars have occurred, the people were just like us right now, right?
Yeah,
They were thinking, I was able to go out last night, laugh, hang with my friends, and then boom, we're at war. So it's okay until it's not. Uh, so sometimes if you ever see me post something and I say I'm a gardener, it's because I'd rather be you know a warrior in a garden. But for now, I'm just working on my garden while during peacetime, I should say.
yeah.
Oh,
So I want to go back a little bit and kind of focus on failure and understanding the role of failure in our lives. Whether it's a significantly ambitious goal, whether it's
Generally, right? Because
yeah, like
generally, people are going
whether
to have
it's
another shot at something.
yeah, whether it's failing at a job, failing at a marriage relationship, failing with your children, failing to you know go for it. Sometimes that's part of it is not going for it. And I think back to a quote that my boss said several years ago, that it's okay if you fail as long as you fail forward. You learn from it, that you grow from it. So I kind
Y-
of want to shift this conversation a little bit to, kind of knowing that failure is a universal experience. It's
It's part of
it's
the
not
process.
yeah, it's not just you. Everyone falls at some point, and I think it's important to remember that first step in transforming failure to something better is to use it as a tool of success, to alter our perception of it. To try to reshape the outcome, or know that it's not about your abilities or capabilities or a sign of defeat. It's just sometimes a situation. It's the process that we have to go through. And this past week at work, actually, somebody was let go from our team, and it kind of blindsided me a little bit.
Mm,
It was someone that I was close with, and I thought back to, you know, the time that I left one of my previous jobs where we actually met. And I think the first thought that goes through your mind is, I failed out of here. And then I had to change that mindset. Like, if you're good enough to work somewhere at a company for 10 years, that's, a Fortune 10 company, it's sometimes circumstances that are completely out of your control.
all right.
If you're good at what you do, that's just part of the industry sometimes being commodity. Like, it's not necessarily an indictment on you. It's oftentimes just a business case. And I think that's something that we have to remember too is, corporate entities aren't human. At the end of the day, we're a line item for these corporations. And I don't know. So I kind of want to pivot that conversation is like understanding the role of failure, how you
Yeah.
deal with it, how you respond to it,
Yeah. You know,
what you
you,
do to keep pushing forward and understand that situation.
I like to package things up in a very distilled manner, Austin.
I love it.
So it's the fear for me. It's the fear of failure that, when you're talking about, viewing failure differently, that bothers me. Anything I'm afraid of bothers me. Right. So I need to figure out how
Lean
to,
into it.
yep. And not be afraid of it. So, I think a lot of people fear failure and they never get off the couch. Right. Or whatever pain is going to be associated with that. And that's part of the process is, I'm talking about, being a 38-year-old man who wants to box again at a very high level. I was in pain every morning. Okay. Every morning I wake up, I'm 6 weeks removed and I still wake up in pain. There's still like, things that are hurting on my body, but that's part of the process. And that's anyone who has ever tried to do anything is going to get the battle scars, so to speak, or the wounds that will eventually heal with time. And as long as you're in one piece, which I would learn a very, very long time ago, it's okay, and it's gonna be all right. Um, and how you want to look at failure, it's not. I guess you could say it's not final, but for me, it is. So I take a little bit of a different approach. So right now, or even over the last 6 weeks, I've been in grieving. And I have to just as I've gotten older, I've become more self aware, where I'm not gonna just push it down and be like, I'm okay. I share with people. I'm a big, strong man, and yes, I am grieving. I have no problem sharing that with people.
How are you grieving and how you're dealing with that?
Really through reflection, and I'm trying to think about, well, what's coming next to my life, or what did I learn from all the process, right? Because I had a plan. Even when I went to speak to Coach Sims, I had a plan from day one. How I was going to go about executing this plan, and I had to be flexible and fluid with that plan. But I'm looking at what resources I had available to me, to include like time, energy, effort, people. It could be a physiotherapist, or even my coach, right? Or he's a competing resource, right? There are other people who would like him to train them, right? So I had to take that into consideration. Sometimes at the last minute, and kind of change up my plan. And I think about how can I apply the things that I learned to my professional life, to my entrepreneurial life, to my relationships, because I want to use those lessons learned here, where it's a very I was speaking to RB, and we were just talking about going for
Shout out to RB, by the way.
it.
One of the early supporters of Cautious Coffee, probably our biggest supporter, I would say.
And just one of the reasons I want to even pull up the conversation is like, one of the reasons I do all the things that I do, is because it puts me in a different frame of mind. And I had said something to her that really distilled everything that I had gone through, and what I was thinking about it, um, was just, putting myself in a position where I had to be like stimulated so high. I'm better able to tune into flow state. Okay. Whether I'm jumping out of an airplane, racing a motorcycle, boxing at a high level. So when I'm, doing things that are not as, dangerous or as intense, like I can get there faster, so it gives me an advantage no matter what room I walk into, right? Knowing that, you know, it's unlikely that the people in this room have put themselves in that position, right? So yeah, that's how I reflect on the failure, and how I leverage it, to give me advantages in other parts of my life.
I think that's good to look at. Obviously I've never tried to go for, the Olympics or anything like that. But I think back to a big failure that happened in my life, and I haven't really shared the whole story with people, and not going to share the whole story on this podcast. But I think back to my junior year, um, sophomore semester, junior year at Baylor. I was international relations, political science major. I was in the honors program. For me, academics was, I would say, easy in high school. Taking advanced placement courses, doing well in those. But for me, I didn't really need to study, and I could still do fine on those exams. And I took that mentality to college. And college, if you don't study, you don't apply yourself, it could be a nightmare. And for me, it's also a different time period when you are being out there in a new environment as an adult for the first time. You've got all of your friends in the world within a 5-minute drive. Um, you know, and I valued relationships uh, over necessarily studying in the classroom. That might have I think paid benefits at the end of the day when you look at it, like the relationship building, and I focus on that now. But it set me back at the time. I got put on academic probation. uh, heading into my fall semester of junior year, and left the honors program and lost a scholarship. And, if I didn't get my act together, I wouldn't have been back at Baylor University. And I remember like refocusing and, kind of saying, all right, this is my last chance. Cause I don't know what's next. If I leave Baylor, where do I go? What university is going to want me? Um, what does my career path look like in the future?
Mhm.
And I had to like look at that failure as like feedback, right? And refocus my priorities and understand a plan of, okay, we need to graduate. That's the most important thing. How do we do it? And I'll tell you what, it's pretty embarrassing when you get that letter in the mail telling you about your how terrible you are at academics. And I know that
For a young
it's
person, I suppose, I
yeah,
can see that. Yeah.
yeah. And it's eye opening. And at the end of the day, I don't know that grades matter. I think it's the experience that matters. And I think everything happens for a reason. But at the moment you don't understand that.
Yeah.
You don't see that.
Right.
And the conversation I was having with somebody the other day is that I can pinpoint that moment as the catalyst that changed my career outlook. Because initially I wanted to go into political science and maybe be a lobbyist or a lawyer. I think my GPA maybe hindered my legal profession ambitions,
Well,
but
you definitely could have been a lobbyist.
yeah, that's true. Um, but I look at that because that moment allowed me to connect with more people, and then I saw my fraternity brothers on the sidelines working sporting events and figured out they were actually working in communications, and that's how I could get paid to watch sports. And then that led to a career in comms and public relations and public
Mhm.
affairs. And it's interesting when you look back at those moments and you realize, like, okay, I see where that path took me. I see where that fork in the road took me.
Yeah. So that brings up a good point,
That's
Austin.
not for everybody.
That brings up a good point. So, to our college age listeners out there, don't worry
Yeah,
about those letters. You're going to be okay. Hang in
yeah.
there.
Unless you're going to med school, then it might matter. You might need to focus on those A's. We'll just put it
Well,
that way.
absolutely, but you can right that ship.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
you think about that momentum that it gave you, right? That pivotal moment and that shift in focus that it gave you. Okay? Think about what it did for your career, Austin. So what does that tell you about failure? And
It's
what
okay to
why
fail.
well, it doesn't just tell you that. It tells you that if it's
Part of life.
been if it's been 20 years since your last failure.
It hasn't. There's plenty of failures since then,
No,
but I just think, to me, I think that is the most pivotal.
but think about that those shifts, right? And
Yeah,
like if you didn't think of like, well, how can I fail bigger? Right? How can I get a bigger shift out of a failure?
yeah.
So it's and that the momentum that it's going to give you. And so you should always be looking to, fail. There you said fail forward, right? So that was a fail forward example that you gave us, and you think about that momentum that it gave you all those years ago. And one of the big reasons why I wanted to go for this Olympic Games was one because there wouldn't be another opportunity,
Mhm.
my son. But thinking about that momentum, the last time that I went for it gave me, in my personal life, in my professional life, in the quiet of my mind when there's no one else around. Okay. The momentum that it gave me. So, and being able to work and go for it, what would it do for me now? So I had perspective going into this. I knew that it was a bit of a long shot, but I liked my chances. Right. So if there's any chance, I like my chances. So I'm like, if anyone can do it, I can.
Yeah,
And
so it's
that's
so you're
just
telling
me.
me there's a chance. We'll
Exactly.
drop in that movie clip maybe if it's not copyrighted.
Yeah.
Does fair use count?
Yeah. So yes. So on your point, it's like, the fail forward piece, we can bring that full circle now, where if it's been a while since you've had a pivotal failure, really reassess what the hell you're doing with your life. You could probably be further along if you care to be. If you care to be further along, maybe you're fine where you're at. Maybe you're okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. Quite honestly, you're in a good rhythm with your wife, your family, your kids. I don't care. Smoking meat on a regular basis, whatever it is you're into, right? If you're
Y-
good with that, I give you two thumbs up. Two thumbs up.
Minor failures. A recent one, DeRae was over a few weeks ago for New Year's, and yeah, I think I made a really good beef rib. Uh, the burnt ends that I made, I was trying to be a little bit creative and utilize the flat of the brisket that might be a little too inside baseball for those of you listening, but there's not a lot of fat on that side for a reason. So maybe take my experience. I think the outside flavor was good, but man, they were chewy.
Yeah.
Man, I screwed that up. Should have used the point meat.
I mean, it was good to me. It was all good to me.
Your reaction when
Yeah.
you're like, oh, you were like, holy shit, Austin. I was like, is that good? And you're like, this is insane. I was like, yes.
Yeah. That was good stuff, man. Yeah, bravo.
All right. So we're about 30 minutes into this episode, kind of wrapping up quickly. And I want for both of us to kind of give our insights and our tips,
Mhm.
maybe of understanding the role of failure and maybe how we can use it as a catalyst for growth in our lives moving forward. So, what tips do you have
I have I
for our
have
listeners to close out?
I like handfuls and bullet points. So, that's one hand. Acknowledge this thing. So I mentioned earlier, I was grieving. I felt this morning, to share with everyone listening. I was like, okay, I think I'm ready again. I don't know what I'm ready for exactly, but I know, within the last 6 weeks, people have been asking me, well, what's next? And I'm like, shit, I don't know. This was my Everest. I just tried to climb Mount Everest and I failed. What do you do after that?
Right.
I'm gonna go back home. I have a saying. What is it? It's show up, shine, and go home, because I believe home is like, such a wonderful place if you have one. So acknowledge this thing, okay, and grieve. And you can share with others. You don't have to just be okay. You're like, I'm grieving right now, and that's just growth and self awareness. Interrogate the experience, not yourself necessarily, right? Don't beat yourself up over it, especially if you gave everything. You didn't cut any corners. You didn't take any shortcuts. You gave it all you had. Yeah. Let's keep moving in a forward direction. And this is a great opportunity to reassess your goals. I don't feel worth any less because I failed to do it. I feel, I'm empowered, quite honestly, because I did do it, and I'm in one piece. So I'm going to reassess my goals. I'm going to grieve a little bit and have some fun and think about the adventures that I want to go on here in the future, because to me, life is just one big ass adventure.
Embrace it.
Celebrate the small wins that you had along the
Yeah.
way. So whatever, struggles that you overcame, and boundaries that you went beyond, be proud of yourself for that and find your inspiration. So Austin, I like what you said. I inspired myself, and you're damn right. Right? Like if I'm looking for inspiration, I go look in the mirror.
That's a
Okay?
good way to put it.
Because it's all about one's full body of work. And I was having a conversation with someone earlier, or maybe it was yesterday, about, I like to anchor every year in something. We may have mentioned that before.
Yep.
On our time episode. So I'm still about that life. Okay. Every year I'm going to figure out some way to anchor that year to where it's memorable, off the top of my head. And I've been doing that for the last 20 years, and I'm not going to stop. And one of the driving factors now is my son, right? If my son gets to a place where he becomes really self-aware about time and how valuable it is, and he asks me, he says, Dad, what did you do in your 20s? Or Dad, what did you do in your 30s? And I'll be damned if I'm going to tell my children, if I have more children, well, I was just at the club, or I was sitting on the couch watching Netflix, or, I don't know, I was wasting my time, basically. I was wasting time. Not going to do it. It's disrespectful to my existence and the existence of my lineage, So those are my 5 points.
That's strong. I like it. And speaking of your son, I love that message that you shared on Instagram a few weeks ago. A screenshot of y'all's text messages where, I think Solo was maybe talking a little shit.
I love it. I love it.
That he could take you on or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. It's the
You're like,
meme where they're searching YouTube how to fight my dad.
Yeah.
And he said I'd win. And I was like, not while you're still getting mopped up by high school kids.
Wow, that was just a savage comeback.
Maybe one day. Exactly. It was just crickets. He didn't reply. He didn't reply at all.
He's still licking his wounds. So Solo, here are 7 tips for you on how to overcome that failure. Yeah, I like your 5 points, DeRae. I think a lot of mine kind of are similar to that, but I did outline them in kind of some bullet points as well. And so, the first one, I think it's important to redefine failure. View it as feedback. Um, don't necessarily look at it as a negative reaction of your work and the effort that you put in. Maybe it's just an opportunity for you to refine your strategies, move forward, reevaluate, um, and continue to progress. I think the second step is, embrace that vulnerability. DeRae had mentioned, that grieving period. I think you have to be open about your struggles. I think too much when you bottle it up inside, you start dwelling on the past rather than looking forward. It can cloud your vision.
It never gets resolved. You
Exactly.
got to grieve to resolve it.
Exactly. And kind of following that out, number 3, I would say, like resilience is key. The way life is given to us, it's unpredictable, it's dynamic. We never know when something in our lives could dramatically change. And I think the ability to bounce back and get back up is crucial. I think you have to learn from that failure, move forward. How do you adjust? How do you pivot? What steps can you take to improve? It's the same in boxing, right? You look at film, you understand, okay, I left my, face open there and took a punch. All right, how do I change my strategy? How do I account for his speed? How do I account for, his solid chin, things like that. So that kind of flows into the fourth point is learn and adapt, analyze what went wrong. You know, document those failures and learn, okay, what were the roadblocks in the way that kept me from reaching my goal? Why didn't I get there? What could I do differently? Maybe if there's another opportunity to go down that similar path. This could be something big in life. It could be, for a job or an interview. If you didn't do well in an interview, kind of understand what went wrong. Was there a question that you didn't answer correctly? Did you not highlight something that was important about you and why you would be the right fit for this role? So kind of analyze what went wrong. Do that self audit and be honest with yourself. I think that's the most important thing. Is don't make excuses. Understand the reality of the situation. uh, Number 5, I think it's important to celebrate those small victories, right? Get 1% better each day. You can't run a marathon overnight. Some people can, DeRay can, but for the most part, not a lot of people are going to be able to run 26.2 miles after haven't not run for over a year. So celebrate those small wins. That time where you run 5 miles, you run 10 miles, you get to 20. Celebrate those. Next, I think it's important to build a network, your own council of advisors, if you will, people that are going to give you honest feedback, the people that are going to, you're going to rely on, that you trust to provide counsel on.
Make sure they're winners, though.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's your own personal board of directors. I think that is something that is, crucial to have in your life. And I think the last thing really, DeRay, is maintain optimism, right? I mean, it's it's tough sometimes if you're a realist and you have a pessimistic outcome. But I think if you have that pessimistic outcome and thoughts, you're going to be focusing more on negativity and why you can't do something. I think you've got to be positive and say, all right, here's why I can't accomplish this. I think,
Even to the point of delusion, I'll say, right? Our delusions
yeah.
take us places.
Yeah.
So in that respect, by all means.
It's something very small, but, and I mentioned this when on the skydiving episode, but I think leading up to it, I was fearing like what could go wrong on the skydiving experience when I jumped out of a plane. And I think looking at fear is the best part of that situation, leaning into it. I think it allowed me to stay calm, on that flight up, and to really embrace the moment in which I was free falling.
But
if I had
Austin,
if I'd been panicked the entire time,
yes,
I don't know that I would have
it would have
enjoyed
been.
it. I don't know that I would have gone through with it.
It would have been less enjoyable. But
Yeah.
that. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, your fear was keeping you from doing one of the most enjoyable things
Yeah.
humans get to do.
Embrace fear.
Embracing that fear allowed you to like dip your toe into it, and it's no different
exhilarating.
than the goals.
Yeah,
But you didn't even get to you didn't even get to the point to where you're with your buddies. You guys are going up. You know, there are 10 of y'all getting ready to do an exit from 14,000 feet, and you're just vibing the whole way up. You know, you're just vibing and jiving the whole way up. Oh, Austin, the fear that's keeping you from doing all those things. You gotta let it go. Yeah.
Oh
You
yeah,
gotta let it
I mean,
go.
it was an incredible experience. I would encourage you all, if you haven't done it.
But I'm talking about your goals too, right?
Yeah.
The goals that
Yeah.
you're afraid of. So, you know, your fear is keeping you from doing something so amazing. You know, just sit that fear on the bench, baby. It's not
Another
it's not
episode. Callback. I love it. I love the callbacks.
bench the fear. Right? It's time to be all in on you.
I love that.
Yeah.
So focus on you in 2024. You know, you don't have to have a resolution necessarily, but have those goals, work backwards, understand that you might fail. That's okay. You know,
Yep.
keep moving forward.
Yep.
At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. DeRae, it's been fun to get back on the microphone.
Yeah. Momentum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
1% better each day. That's the most important part.
Exactly. About that life.
Exactly. If you want to follow our work, cautiouscoffee.com. That's the best way to find us. All of our links are there. Social media. I would say stay tuned in the coming weeks for updates on a book club newsletter. I don't know, maybe by the time you're listening to this, the newsletter's out. So keep an eye open for that. We definitely want to be more engaging, build an audience, build a community this year. I think that's one of the most important things for us. So if you have feedback, send us a DM, email us, contact@cautiouscoffee.com, and you can find us anywhere you want. But DeRae, it's been fun. I've enjoyed this.
Until next time.
See ya.